all about cutting potatoes and planting them?
Well, in preparing potatoes to be planted, you want to make sure that there is enough potato with the eyes to give it nourishment until it can get to producing from the roots. Now the old timers would just take this off and then use all of this part of the potato for human consumption. That was back when you had 5 or 6 kids and you could eat a lot of potatoes at a time. See, now you could use all of this for supper tonight. Now it is better if these had already been planted before the sprouts got to this point. And when you're planting them, make sure that this is up, and also make sure when you're covering it or putting it down in the ground that you don't knock these off, because if you knock this off, then that is not going to produce a plant. But the soil needs to be soft, and put it in there and just take your hands and plant them by hand and put the soil back around it. Be careful not to knock these off. As I've already said, these potatoes should have been planted. The sprouts got them. But now, Tricia says in her videos, they say they want 2 sprouts for every. Well, you plant 2 and hope at least one of them will grow. You know, the old timers, when we dropped the corn by hand to planting corn, they put one for the worm, 1 for the crow, and 2 to grow. Well, this is kind of the same philosophy here. And in cotton, they planted more seed than they wanted, and most of you are not old enough to have heard about chopping cotton. Maybe you've heard about picking cotton, but chopping cotton, you went back and thinned it if you got too many plants, so that you would have the right ratio, a number of plants for your soil. And there's a difference between chopping cotton and picking cotton, but if you done it all day, whatever you had for supper tasted good that night. But with potatoes, the main thing is to get them in the ground and soft, and put the dirt back around them, because if you just put clods and lumps of dirt around them, then you're jeopardizing a good growth from each eye. Having the soil prepared before you start planting, and then do it right, and you have to do it by hand. But always plant them with this up. Don't plant it upside down. You might get a plant and you might not, but it's very important to plant this with these sprouts growing up. That's why you just about have to plant them by hand. You can't just go down through there, throw them down, and then take a rake and rake the dirt over and be very successful at it. It's just like most of the garden is handwork. And back when I was talking about planting corn by hand, then it was hand labor. There wasn't much mechanization, wasn't very much machinery. Now see, this was a complete potato. Now this might as well be supper tomorrow night, because this is all it needs to get it to establish a root system. And this, no point in putting that in the ground, you're just wasting it. But depends on who's cooking, I guess. But here's a good example right here. I would plant that very carefully with that up. If you get 3 plants out of it, so what? On good soft soil, 3 potatoes don't have to be spaced out, because they're going to draw enough nourishment from the soil that they will produce more potatoes. Basically, that's a short part of the whole story. Was there anything else you wanted to dwell on?
No, but I have a furrow already made, so let's walk over to the area that I have prepared and show them how to put the potato in the ground.
These potatoes should have been, they're getting a little bit soft and mushy. How long have you had them here from the time you bought them?
About 3 weeks.
Well, see, they shouldn't have been kept here 3 weeks. Should have been kept in a darker, lower temperature and then you wouldn't have this sprouting effect on. When you buy them, if you not, of course, like when I was growing up, you saved the potatoes from this year's crop to plant for next year's crop. You didn't go to the store and buy potatoes to plant, but these potatoes should have been kept in a drier, lower temperature than they were. Then we wouldn't have all this sprouting effect on them. You want more, or is that enough?
Well, let's finish cutting those up and let's take them and plant what I have left to plant.
How far apart are you putting them?
Somewhere between 8 to 12 inches apart.
Well, 10 inches is plenty far enough apart in this soil. Now we have a very desirable soil here. It's not clay and it's not gumbo, and it's got just enough sand to be a good sandy loam. And you know the old song, plant your taters in sandy ground. Well, this ground here has just about the right amount of sand, and it's super good for sweet potatoes. Of course, you plant sweet potatoes by what they call a little slip, little plants. They're entirely different than the Irish potatoes. But there's really no point to waste all of this part of the potato by putting it in the ground, because that won't make your future potatoes any better. See, there's no point in putting that in the ground, because actually you're just wasting it. There isn't any more eyes on it, and the old timers would kick your hind end if you wasted that much food. But that was a different time, different people, different folks. Not the same now. I know I'm an old fogey, out of whack with the time, but I grew up in a different environment. Wasting a lot of good food there. Put them up and put them somewhere where the soil will be just right to cover them back up. You don't want to put a root mass or clods or anything like that. You want to plant them where the soil will be over them nice and soft, and kind of pat it down, but don't put enough pressure on it to break these sprouts off. Just cover it back up with soil and do like that. Kind of get the other stuff out of the way so that you can get good dirt back over. Now, if we could get a good gentle rain on this and not a washing rain, it would be a lot better. Well, that's about it. Just go ahead and plant them like that. I need to